and welcome to the Hardcore Giveaway and Gamers Club channel. Today's video is the HDMI port replacement for the PS4 model 1115A. And yes, you did hear me right, Hardcore Giveaway and Gamers Club channel. And I do give away in excess of $100 a month and game systems, PCs, all kind of stuff to my subscribers. First comment wins as a gift for coming back on a regular basis and watching videos from time to time and keeping up with what's new on my channel. I plan on putting up a whole lot of other videos, but let's get to this video, and then at the end I'm going to talk about and show you what some of these other guys are doing that are teaching kids very bad habits and very bad repair methods. Okay, so let's get straight to the actual repair, where I am replacing the HDMI component, and I walk you through the whole thing. Hello and welcome to the HGC. This video is the repair and replacement of an HDMI port for a PS4. As you can see, although it doesn't really look damaged, the port is actually pushed in. Sony used some of the cheapest ports on the market. If this was actually looking proper, them lines on the port itself would actually be vertical, not looking sideways. So just for those of you who want to know that the board was actually repaired and that I'm actually doing the repair, I'm going to mark on it, and we'll video this board start to finish. Now, I'm not going to bother putting up a video showing that it was working, because I don't video repairs that didn't work. I mean, that's just wrong. I've seen too many fake videos where you can spot that the color of the caps were different and different components in different areas. There you go. That's what that port looks up like, nice and up close before the replacement. That plastic tab got pushed out, all them contacts got yanked off. Put it on a BGA welder. I see all of these guys showing using heat guns. Oh my god, I get so many of them in from people destroying them, trying to use that. It's just virtually impossible. I guarantee you about 80% of the board's done with a heat gun. If the guy has done it a lot of times and quite regularly, 80% of them are going to fail, because they're going to rip off the contacts, they're going to knock all them tiny little components off near it. I mean, some of them things are like the size of a grain of sand, literally. And having that board put in a vise and pulling the port off after taking a heat gun to it, that the heat cannot be controlled, it's just insane. Okay, so what I'm doing here is removing the old solder that was on it previous, which is in fact lead free, and I am using leaded solder, not because it's better than the lead free, but it is easier to work with. I definitely wouldn't use lead free on a reball. That's just sheer stupidity. Anyway, we're going to basically retint it with lead. Makes it a lot easier for reinstalling the port itself. Make sure you get a nice clean work area on your board. Alright, and so what we need now is a replacement HDMI port. Now, I do use upgraded ports where the entire backside is locked in and all of the contacts themselves are behind a plastic barrier, and then on the face side, rather than the pins just sitting on top and bottom. They actually lock into the inside of another a plastic retainer, which prevents the HDMI port from actually grabbing them and ripping them off. So yeah, much better. Now these ports always have flaws that you'll have to correct. You see that little tool I'm using to bend that up? That is the small end of a X-Acto knife. See how that? I mean, that's the sharp end of the X-Acto knife. It looks blunt. Them pins are less than half a millimeter, 0.05 millimeters in width. All right. They do need to be as close to straight as possible whenever you're putting these things in, so you always have to inspect. Again, 80% of them guys doing the replacements, they fail so many times because they don't know what they're doing. They watch YouTube videos. They have no schooling in electronics. They have no education in soldering. I mean, this is micro soldering. The pad that them 0.05 millimeter solder pins actually go on is only 0.1 millimeter wide. So yeah, and just in case you're not familiar, that's less than the width of a hair. These things are extremely close together. Okay, now I'm not going to show you every last detail of me straightening these pins out, but here we go. I took it into the garage, put it on the machine, removed the HDMI port, and right now I'm basically cleaning up the port itself so that I can inspect. Now if you look closely at these legs, some of them are slightly off, other ones are raised. If these are not all the way down and in contact with the pad, you could wind up with a cold solder or a solder joint that goes cold a week to a month or so afterwards. So you want to make sure that they're all soldered in place and all the way down, and preferably as straight as possible. That lets you know that they're nice and straight. So we need to go in and touch these up. I did have a little bit of an issue with my soldering iron during this taping. Apparently the tip was not in all the way, which meant I wasn't getting the heat that was needed. Alright, so we're going to apply a little bit of flux here, and you'll see me basically struggling a little bit with the soldering iron because of it not being as hot as it's supposed to be. And it was close, but not good enough to do what it was doing. Actually, and I'll point it out here once I get to the point. See, it looks like everything's going along fine, and then I get to about the 5th pin and it completely detaches and would not solder into place. And it took me a little while to figure out what exactly was going on. So I wound up redoing every single last pin after correcting the issue with the soldering iron. The heat of the soldering iron has to be precise. Too hot, you'll burn the contacts off the board. Too cold, and you won't be able to get the solder contact to connect and solder in place properly. Okay, so some of these were only soldered at the very tip, which allowed the colder soldering iron to allow it to go down. Okay, now watch here. I think I poked that one leg again just to double check it. Yeah, see how that one leg's moving? Here I go back to go try and hit it again, and it just wasn't working. See, loose again. I tried to go directly on the top. That didn't work. I cut that short, and you can see where I just kind of tapped on the plastic there. Very little. Anyway, once I corrected the heat for the soldering iron issue, then I was able to come back and retouch all of the legs of the HDMI port and all of the solder points. See that? It didn't quite go. Hold it there for a second, and bam! Now it's nice and perfectly in place. This repair was in fact successful. Everything went along perfectly fine once my soldering iron got up to temperature. Okay. Retouch that one. See, every once in a while, this is such fine and small work, it's really easy to push them pads off. So let's clean it up here. Just use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a cotton Q-tip swab. That way you can inspect the solder work, double check, see if everything's as close to lined up as possible. You want at least 98% of the leg on the contact pad. Okay, we've got one leg that's a little off, and I'll get a nice close-up of it here. See that? A little bit more than I care for. And that one there, probably touch up that end one. I will touch up all of them just prior to finishing this off, but just to keep the video as short as possible, I'm not going to video all of that. Alright, so here I am. I'm finished with the port itself. I'm going to do a final cleanup of the work area. Always clean off as much of the old flux as possible. Even if you're using a no clean flux, I guarantee you over time it will become corrosive, even though they say it won't. Okay, so here we go. Get a nice clean shot of the legs all in place. Sorry about the autofocus. There we go. Okay, so all the legs are in place. I'll try and get that shot again a little bit better here. Okay, wait for the autofocus. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Good enough. You can see that they're all in place. They're all lined up. All of it works fine. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what not to do. This is a repair video from Mike T. He is obviously a repairman, and according to his video, obviously self-taught off the piggy banks of his customers, because let me get to this point here. I'm going to play just a little bit of this video. Looky here, we got the heat gun. Very bad. He's got the board in a vise, vertical. And let's see, a little bit further up here, he's talking about using a pair of pliers and the heat gun. And he's sitting there pulling on the board. Let's take a look.
The first part is heating up the board, and the second part right here is, pulling as you heat up.
Okay, pulling as you heat up. Let me back this up to where we can see that board a little better. Right here. Okay. When you use a heat gun and a pair of pliers in a vise like this, when that solder reaches its melting point, if the pads are not fully melted, when that releases, he will rip pads off. And I guarantee you he has in the past and destroyed the customer's game system and just blamed it on the fact that it was broken. Okay. When that releases, it will release very quickly, and you see all these tiny little components right here, half the time they go flying all over the board. I mean, crazy. This is insane.
That you'll be able to attach the new one to it.
Oh,
So it's pretty
what
much,
is this?
You know, obviously, once you get the new one to it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much, you know, obviously, once you get
What is that? Roach poo? I don't know.
HDMI port back onto the board. You know that. HDMI port back.
Yeah, here he goes.
Let you guys just
Using a
watch.
heat gun like this, that can literally fry the chips around it, burn up them components. That heat gun that he's using has a 100-degree temperature swing minute to minute. There's no way to control its temperature. And watch what happens when this actually releases here in just a moment. Come on, come on, come on.
Then once you do get it in there, you want to turn off the heat gun or the hot air gun.
Okay, he's
And kind of hold the
touching that
fire
board.
in place so that it doesn't slide out. The solder cools down almost instantly, so you just need to turn it off and then just
He's actually touching the components on the opposite side of the board with that heat gun by actually touching the board with the heat gun. Like he couldn't even get it off doing it that way. Oh my God! And people actually see him do this and send him game systems. This is insanely nuts.
bad camera angle, but it's just a thing. Bad camera angle, but it's just a thing. Obviously,
That port hasn't been replaced yet. I can see it's still bent. So let's go back, mate. Let's go back. Let's go right here. When he turns it sideways, the port hasn't been replaced yet. What's up with that? Look. See it? You can see where it's still bent right here and right here. Yeah. No. This is what I'm telling you. When that pops off, that board will bounce. These components will go flying all over the place. I get boards like this all the time from people who tried to do this. I even chewed out one of our local big shops for allowing their newly hired repairman for doing it and breaking a trace, and explained to her exactly what he did and what she did by allowing him to do it and not checking his background in electronics. She thankfully fired him and now brings all of her stuff to me, because I was able to repair the trace that was broken and actually get their customer's game system up and running, even though I did charge her more than I normally do for all the extra work I had to do. So there's lots of these videos around. Please, 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 please do not follow them. As you've seen in my video, it's extremely tedious work. You have to get the contacts on right. A heat gun and a pair of pliers is just not gonna do it. This is Daniel of the HGC saying stay safe and happy gaming, everybody. And don't forget to stop by my playlist for the giveaways.